Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. The hidden wound. There are moments in life when you feel a presence inside you that no one else can see. It is not a voice you can point to, nor a wound that leaves visible scars. Yet, you know it is there. It is like carrying a secret weight, invisible to the world but heavy on your soul. On the outside, everything may appear fine, you laugh, you work, you play your roles well. But when the laughter fades and silence returns, that weight presses down harder. It is the kind of burden that no amount of sleep or distraction can lift. For some people, that hidden wound began with absence. The absence of someone who left too soon, a parent who walked away, a loved one taken by death before their time, or even someone who was physically present but emotionally unreachable. That absence leaves a hole so profound that it becomes a constant echo, reminding you of what you lost and what you never had. For others, the wound comes from words. Words can bruise as deeply as blows, and sometimes more. A single sentence spoken in childhood, "You're worthless, you'll never be good enough, why can't you be like them?" can live inside the psyche like a parasite. Years later, even when those words are forgotten consciously, they resurface in every hesitation, every fear of failing, every restless doubt about your worth. And then there are wounds shaped not by words, but by silence. The silence of abandonment when you needed comfort most. The silence of someone who should have protected you but turned away. The silence of being unseen in a family where love was conditional, or where affection was replaced by criticism and comparison. That silence is deafening, and it lingers long after the moment has passed. Sometimes the wound comes from experiences too painful to name. A touch that should never have happened. A betrayal you pretend you forgot but your body still remembers. A situation you told yourself was normal because facing its cruelty was unbearable. Even if you never speak of it, your mind and body record it with perfect memory, replaying it through unexplained fear, sudden anger, or the feeling of being broken without knowing why. Family, too, often leaves marks. Parents who did not know how to love in healthy ways. Mothers who projected their frustrations onto their children. Fathers who withdrew into silence or demanded perfection without giving support. Siblings who competed for attention while you only wanted to be acknowledged. What should have been a home of safety and love sometimes becomes the birthplace of wounds that follow you forever. And if not at home, then perhaps outside. An abusive relationship that chipped away at your spirit. A betrayal that left you doubting whether trust is ever possible. The sudden death of someone who was your foundation. Or even something that cannot be named at all, an unexplainable void that keeps resurfacing in your struggles with trust, your fear of rejection, or the anger that bursts out for reasons you don't fully understand. The truth is, it doesn't matter whether the trauma was visible or invisible, whether it was recognized by others or dismissed as not a big deal. Pain does not need permission to exist. What matters is its impact on your inner world. Trauma takes root in the places where your cry for help was ignored, where no one welcomed your feelings, where no one offered safety. And so, you learn to adapt. You learn to silence your pain. You smiled while bleeding inside. You carried on as if nothing had happened, praised for being strong while secretly feeling further away from yourself. In time, you became an expert at surviving. You got good at hiding your pain behind achievements, behind busy routines, behind laughter that did not always reach your eyes. Yet, survival is not the same as living. The more you suppressed, the more disconnected you became, not just from others, but from yourself. You forgot how to truly live, because you were always protecting the wound no one else could see. This is the hidden wound. It does not announce itself with dramatic scars or visible breaks. It exists quietly, shaping your choices, your relationships, your sense of self. And until it is acknowledged, until it is faced with compassion and truth, it remains, an invisible weight pulling you further from who you are meant to be. What trauma really is. When people hear the word trauma, they often think of dramatic events, car accidents, natural disasters, violent assaults, or wars. But the reality is more subtle and far-reaching. Trauma is not defined by the scale of the event but by its impact on your inner world. It is not what happened on the outside that matters most, but what happened inside you as a result. Sometimes, the deepest trauma does not come from obvious catastrophes but from the quiet, ordinary moments where you needed love and found none. A child left alone to cry without comfort. A teenager mocked instead of being understood. An adult humiliated at work or betrayed by someone they trusted. The severity is not measured in headlines or statistics, it is measured in the way the experience shatters your sense of safety, belonging, or worth. Carl Jung understood this truth deeply. He described trauma not as a single wound but as a rupture in the natural flow of the psyche. Imagine a river suddenly blocked by rocks. The water does not disappear, it gets diverted, fragmented, swirling into hidden channels. That is what happens to the soul when an overwhelming event occurs. It breaks the continuity of your inner life, forcing parts of yourself underground. When we experience something that exceeds our emotional capacity, loss, abuse, neglect, abandonment, humiliation, the conscious mind cannot cope. The ego, fragile and limited, cannot process the weight of what has happened. In that moment, the psyche makes a drastic decision. It pushes the unbearable into the unconscious. Not because it wants to forget, but because it must protect itself from disintegration. But what is repressed does not die. It reorganizes in the dark, reshaping itself into something new. Jung called these formations complexes. They are like little selves inside of you, clusters of intense emotional energy that remain active long after the event. They live below awareness, but their influence is undeniable. Complexes can act like subpersonalities, each carrying the voice of an old wound. One whispers, "You're not enough." Another warns, "Everyone will leave you." Another shouts, "Don't trust anyone." They appear in the form of repeating patterns you can't escape. Relationships always ending in the same kind of betrayal. Explosive anger triggered by minor criticism. A constant fear of rejection, even when no one is rejecting you. Persistent anxiety that seems to come from nowhere. These patterns are not random, they are the wounded parts of your psyche trying to be heard. But instead of listening, we often push them down further. We distract ourselves with work, bury ourselves in entertainment, numb ourselves with substances, or hide behind perfectionism. Yet the psyche does not forget. The repressed wound continues to live and act, pulling the strings of our choices, shaping our view of the world. Jung recognized that this process disrupts individuation, the natural journey of becoming whole. Trauma interrupts that journey, leaving us as fragmented adults carrying the emotions of wounded children. And so, we grow up physically but remain stuck emotionally. We become people who appear strong on the outside but are governed inside by unacknowledged fears and unhealed wounds. The tragedy of trauma is that it disguises itself. It makes you believe that your reactions are just who you are. You tell yourself, "I'm just jealous. I'm just anxious. I'm just angry. But these are not natural personality traits, they are symptoms of unresolved pain. They are the voice of trauma, speaking through you without your consent. And so, trauma is not just a memory of something bad. It is an ongoing presence. It is the echo of what was once unbearable, still reverberating through your choices, your behaviors, your relationships. It is the past refusing to stay in the past. But here is the truth that matters most: if trauma has the power to fragment, it also reveals the path to wholeness. The very patterns that repeat endlessly are not punishments, but signals. They are your psyche's way of drawing your attention to what has been denied. Trauma separates us from ourselves, but in doing so, it also points us toward the work of reconnection. The wound may have been created in silence, but healing begins with recognition. It begins with facing the truth that trauma is not about weakness, nor is it a flaw in your character. It is the mark of a soul that endured more than it could carry at the time. And the fact that you are here, searching for understanding, means that the part of you which was silenced has not given up, it still longs to be heard. How trauma shapes behavior. Even when you cannot remember every detail of what hurt you, the trauma remembers you. It does not vanish because you bury it. Instead, it quietly weaves itself into your reactions, your habits, and your relationships. It shows up in the way you struggle to set boundaries, in the panic that arises at the thought of being left behind, in the constant suspicion that you are not enough. Trauma does not remain locked in the past, it walks beside you into the present. Carl Jung explained that the unconscious does not stay hidden forever. Contents that are repressed eventually return, often in distorted and disguised forms. This is why you may find yourself repeating the same patterns even when you swear you will never go through them again. A new partner seems different from the last, yet the relationship ends with the same betrayal. A fresh job feels promising, but you find yourself facing the same humiliations. It feels like life is playing a cruel trick, but in reality, the psyche is representing the old wound, hoping it will finally be faced. Freud described this as the repetition compulsion. The mind unconsciously recreates situations that mirror the original trauma, as if seeking resolution. Yet without awareness, resolution never comes. Instead, the wound deepens. You are left wondering, why does this always happen to me? The answer is not fate or bad luck, it is trauma pulling the strings from behind the curtain. This is why trauma shapes behavior so powerfully. It hijacks emotions, overriding logic. You may tell yourself, this time will be different, but when the complex is still active, it drags you back into the same cycle. Anger explodes over small criticisms, fear paralyzes you at the thought of rejection, sadness overwhelms you at the smallest sign of disconnection. These reactions are not exaggerated, they are the voice of an old wound demanding attention. The most subtle influence of trauma is the way it implants lies into the foundations of your identity. Lies such as, I don't deserve love. I can't trust anyone. If I show who I really am, I will be abandoned. These beliefs do not arrive fully formed in your conscious mind. They seep in gradually, shaping how you interpret the world. Without realizing it, you start building your life on top of these emotional falsehoods. You choose partners who confirm them, jobs that reinforce them, friendships that repeat them. In this way, trauma quietly programs your future. Jung saw these dynamics as the work of complexes, autonomous psychic structures that live inside us like subpersonalities. They carry their own emotions, voices, and perspectives. When triggered, they temporarily take control, leaving you to wonder afterward, why did I react that way? That wasn't me. In truth, it was a wounded part of you acting out its pain. consider how this shows up in daily life. A person who experienced abandonment as a child may feel an irrational terror when their partner is late to return a call. Another who was criticized constantly may overreact to even the smallest feedback, interpreting it as proof they are worthless. Someone who once felt powerless in a violent environment may lash out aggressively when they feel threatened, even if the situation is minor. These are not conscious choices, they are reflexes born of trauma. The tragedy is that trauma convinces you these reactions are simply who you are. You might say, "I'm just jealous, just anxious, just angry." But these labels are misleading. What you are calling your personality is often just trauma expressing itself through you. Your true self, the one untouched by wounds, exists beneath, waiting to be uncovered. This is why trauma is not only about external behavior. It reshapes your internal landscape as well. It colors your thoughts, infects your beliefs, distorts your worldview. Left unchecked, it convinces you that life is unsafe, people are untrustworthy, and love is dangerous. It whispers that you must stay small, guarded, or perfect in order to survive. And without realizing it, you live according to these rules, not because they are true, but because they once protected you. The good news is that these patterns are not destiny. They are signals. Every irrational fear, every repeating cycle, every self-sabotage is the psyche's way of pointing toward what remains unresolved. Trauma is both the problem and the invitation, the call to return to the place of the wound and finally bring it into the light. Understanding how trauma shapes behavior is the first step toward breaking free. Because once you see that your patterns are not proof of weakness but evidence of unhealed pain, you begin to reclaim your power. And with that awareness, the possibility of change opens. The illusion of escape. Human beings are experts at running from pain. We disguise it, we numb it, we bury it under layers of distraction. Work, busyness, social media, substances, toxic positivity, all become tools to avoid the discomfort of looking inward. For a while, these strategies seem to work. The laughter feels real, the achievements distract, the scrolling fills the silence. Yet deep down, the wound waits. The truth is simple but difficult to accept, ignoring trauma does not erase it. It only drives it deeper into the shadows. Carl Jung's warning was clear: what you resist, persists. The suffering you avoid does not vanish, it changes form. It sinks into the unconscious and begins to shape your choices from beneath the surface. You may think you are in control, but trauma becomes the hidden author of your story. Suddenly, love feels unsafe, success feels unreachable, and life itself feels like a minefield. What was once a wound becomes a lens, distorting every aspect of reality. Many people mistake avoidance for strength. They say, "I've moved on," or "it doesn't bother me anymore," while their actions tell a different story. They jump from one relationship to another, never feeling secure. They sabotage opportunities the moment they arise. They bury themselves in work until exhaustion becomes their only escape. On the surface, it looks like functioning; underneath, it is survival at its most fragile. Freud explained that repression, the mind's attempt to keep painful content out of awareness, is the seed of neurosis. Suppressing pain does not resolve it. It anesthetizes for a time, but eventually, the repressed material returns with greater intensity. It may reappear as panic attacks, compulsions, depression, or cycles of self-sabotage. In other words, what you refuse to face grows stronger, more destructive, and more confusing the longer it is ignored. You may have noticed how life sometimes feels like it repeats itself, almost like an echo. Different people, different places, yet the same conflicts return. A partner leaves, a friend betrays, a boss humiliates, and you are left with the same ache. This is not coincidence. Jung described it as meaningful synchronicity, external events that mirror unresolved inner realities. The outer world becomes a stage where the unconscious plays out its script until it is acknowledged. And here lies the uncomfortable truth: by avoiding pain, you also avoid transformation. Growth requires confrontation. The psyche only matures when it encounters emotional truth, and that truth is rarely comfortable. Healing is not found in denial, distraction, or pretending to be positive. It is found in facing what hurts. The illusion of escape is tempting because it feels easier. Remaining in the chaos you already know often feels safer than venturing into the unknown of healing. It takes less effort to suppress than to confront, less courage to distract than to sit with pain. But the cost is high. The pain you avoid today will return tomorrow, disguised as another broken relationship, another cycle of fear, another eruption of anger. Jung was blunt: there is no awakening of consciousness without pain. This does not mean you must suffer endlessly. It means that suffering must be acknowledged, processed, and transformed. Pain is the gateway, not the prison. But as long as you continue to run, you remain trapped in a life that is not truly yours. Think of it this way: every attempt to escape trauma is like pressing down on a spring. You can hold it for a while, but the pressure builds. Eventually, it rebounds with more force than before. Healing begins the moment you stop pressing and allow the energy to be released, not through suppression but through understanding. The illusion of escape promises safety, but it delivers repetition. True safety comes only when the wound is seen, when the pain is given voice, when the shadow is brought into light. And yes, this hurts at first. But the hurt of healing is different from the hurt of repression. One leads to freedom, the other deepens the chains. The question then becomes, if avoidance doesn't work, what does? How do we stop running and start facing trauma in a way that transforms rather than destroys? The answer lies in conscious, practical steps, tools that help you reconnect with the lost parts of yourself. That is the path we now turn to explore. The path to healing. If trauma can fragment us, then healing is the art of gathering those fragments back into wholeness. This is not a quick fix, nor a journey that can be completed overnight. Healing requires courage, patience, and above all, honesty. It means facing what you have long avoided, listening to the cries you once silenced, and giving space to the parts of you that were abandoned. Carl Jung wrote, "Healing is not about becoming perfect, but about becoming whole." This wholeness is not the absence of wounds but the integration of them. Your pain does not disappear, it becomes part of your story, a scar that no longer bleeds. The goal is not to erase the past but to reclaim the power it once stole from you. The first step toward healing is awareness. You must notice your patterns with radical honesty. Every trigger, every disproportionate reaction, every cycle that repeats is a doorway. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" ask, "Where does this come from? What part of me is still hurting?" This shift transforms symptoms into signals. The panic, the anger, the jealousy, the fear, they are not enemies but messengers pointing you toward what remains unresolved. The second step is expression. Trauma thrives in silence. Writing, speaking, and creative expression open channels for what was once suppressed. Journaling is especially powerful. Write as if no one will ever read it. Tell the story of your wound with raw honesty, what you felt, what you wished you could have said, what still lingers. Jung believed words are bridges between the conscious and unconscious. Writing allows hidden emotions to take symbolic form, making them easier to integrate. Another profound practice is active imagination, a Jungian technique where you consciously engage with the unconscious. Sit in stillness, close your eyes, and allow an image to arise, a child, an animal, a landscape, a shadow. Do not censor it. Instead, begin a dialogue. What do you want to show me? What do you need? These conversations often reveal truths that logic could never access. Dream analysis offers another pathway. During sleep, the mind lowers its guard, and the unconscious speaks more freely. Keep a notebook beside your bed. Record your dreams immediately upon waking, even fragments. Pay attention to recurring symbols or emotions, monsters, accidents, pursuits, or endless journeys. These images often disguise unresolved trauma, offering clues to what your psyche is asking you to face. Healing also requires the body. Trauma does not live only in the mind, it is stored in muscles, in breath, in posture. Practices like conscious breathing, somatic yoga, free movement, or meditative walking remind the body it is safe. Each deep breath, each release of tension, tells the nervous system a new story. I am no longer in danger. I can rest now. The body must be reintegrated into the healing process for the mind to truly let go. Rituals of closure can also be transformative. Write letters to those who hurt you, not to send, but to release. Burn them, bury them, or keep them as a symbol of acknowledgement. Draw your pain, then destroy the drawing as an act of transformation. These symbolic acts speak directly to the unconscious, offering it the resolution it longs for. Sometimes, healing requires the presence of another. Therapy, particularly Jungian or psychoanalytic work, provides a safe container to explore what feels unbearable alone. The therapist does not heal you. They walk beside you as you reclaim the fragments of yourself. Asking for help is not weakness, it is wisdom. Most importantly, healing requires consistency. A single insight is not enough. True transformation comes through daily action. Small practices, writing, breathing, reflecting, engaging with dreams, done regularly build a new relationship with your pain. Over time, the wound that once controlled you becomes a part of your story, no longer the author of it. And here is the most liberating truth: you are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to do with what happened. Trauma convinces you that you are broken, defective, unworthy. Healing reveals the lie. You are not your wound, you are the one who survived it. And survival is proof that the strength to heal has always lived within you. The path to healing is not easy, but it is possible. It begins the moment you stop running, the moment you turn toward your pain with compassion rather than fear. It continues with each small act of integration, each step toward wholeness. And it ends not with perfection, but with peace, the peace of knowing that you are no longer a prisoner of your past.